All right, we're live. What is up, Partner Up? I've been waiting for this one for a long time because we would not be here today at Partner Hacker without the OGs and the OG himself, Max Altucher from founded Sales Hacker, and Scott Barker, someone who's been a longtime friend and a guest on the podcast early days, like almost 2 years ago. Max and Scott, thanks so much for joining us at the PLX Summit on Sales Day. So good to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Totally.
Happy to be here. Ready to chop it up.
Yeah. And Scott, where the heck are you again?
I am in Puerto Escondido, Mexico, doing a little work by the beach, a little surfing. Lots going on right now, though, so pretty locked in, at least today.
Max, what about you? That looks like a Marriott.
It is a Fairmont. Thank you very much. There's the pier, Santa Monica Pier. Over there.
My gosh. We got a hurricane outside the window here in St. Pete.
Yeah, we're in hurricane land.
It's weak. Yeah,
it's totally weak.
So I want to see some people who are watching live. Give some emoji love if you are a Sales Hacker fan, or if Sales Hacker has been any part of your career, added any value. There we go. We got some hearts coming in. I love those emojis.
Yeah, or the new newsletter and podcast, GTM Fund.
Yes,
right?
GTM Fund, huge shout out.
Yeah, we've got a lot of love from that as well.
Scott's doing a great job.
Let's go back in time though. I want to go back when you first started Sales Hacker. Like a lot of things that I think are taken for granted now were very different. Can you paint like a picture for us of what was the sales profession like? What was the landscape like? What was the community, if there was one? Like
there was not much. I mean, there was I didn't even know it existed, but I found out a little while later. But there was like Sales 2.0 and AAISP, American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. Kind of more old school organizations. They had a lot of enterprise folks. I'll give them that. They had folks that I think a lot of tech companies would call it non-ICP, but outside of tech companies, head of revenue operations for Amtrak or Kimberly-Clark or things like that, unsexy businesses, but that made a lot of money. But there was not a lot of focus on sales technology, which is what we wanted to focus on. And I think we hit that wave at the right time. I was one of the first customers over at a company called takeover, and that was an early sales engagement product. There was Yesware, there was Seismic.
Yep.
There were, other than that, it was like Salesforce and LinkedIn Sales Nav. There wasn't that much. And we started in 2013, we started Sales Hacker. And then I think in 2015 was really the inflection point where you started to see a lot of funding go towards sales technology. And, I've written a LinkedIn post on this, a couple months ago, but, I think it was like spring of 2015. But Outreach had raised their seed round, like $2.3 million seed. SalesLoft had raised their A, like a $10 million A. ToutApp had raised their B, like a $20 million from like Andreessen. Yesware had raised their B, which was a bunch of battery or something like that. Yeah, like $30 million. And then there was Gainsight had raised a ton, if you want to include them there. There was Inside Sales had raised like $150 million from Salesforce and Microsoft and a bunch of others. I know I'm missing some companies there. So I know Seismic did a round in that time frame. So you just started seeing a lot of money go towards sales technology, and I think like we didn't really have that much innovation for salespeople since Salesforce. Like maybe Sales Nav was really the only other thing. So we were ripe for that level of disruption. And marketing had its cycle about 5 years earlier when you saw HubSpot, Marketo, Aloco, Responses, ExactTarget, Pardot, all have outcomes. So sales was due. Sales budgets were coming from marketing. Like sales didn't really have its own budgets. Now like people have sales tech budgets. But back then it was like, hey, marketing, can we get some dollars to go spend on this thing? Like it's going to make your number look a lot better. And I think that worked out. But yeah, it was different times, and it was still, we say the bull market was from like 2010 to last year till 21 basically. But even then, like things weren't that bullish. Like nothing really popped until maybe like 2018, 19, 20, and then things went crazy. But even back then, it was still hard to get a seed round done. It was still hard to raise money. There wasn't a ton going into tech, and So it was an interesting time for us to start that business, and even doing trade shows and sponsorships and stuff like that was tough. I think if you continue running Sales Hacker on its own, through 2018 to 2022, like that would have been a great time to go reach out and grab all these budgets. I felt like we were, for like the last at least 2 or 3 years, in one of those machines where like there's money floating around. You just got to like go and grab it. Budgets. So we'll see. I mean, like the media company stuff is going to get harder, I think, next year and after, with companies being a little tighter. But it just means that the media companies need to do a better job of, showing that value. And I think, at Sales Hacker, we were onto something there. I mean, we were sending people leads and, really placing people in position to go find new technology and bring in revenue for software vendors who were just starting out.
It sounds so familiar to the partnerships people we're talking to right now. When you're like, hey, look, these sales teams, they didn't even have their own budget for their tech. They had to go ask marketing. How familiar is that? Right?
Yeah.
Partner people like, hey, I have this different tech I need to use, PRM, whatever, and they got to go ask somebody else.
Yeah, they're going and begging, borrowing, stealing for Reveal or Partner Stack or Crossbeam or something like that to go help the sales team hit their number, and they're going to their CRO. And we got some, I want to acknowledge, we actually got some dope people in chat right now. People that you probably know, Max.
I was just going to say, we got
Joe Rowley in chat, Matt Cameron.
People I have great respect for and admire that were speakers at Major League conferences. Legends, Jill and Matt, I see in there.
You lost the mic.
Oh, you lost the mic on your side? Uh-oh. Technical difficulties.
And we lost the headset too. Yeah.
All right, Max, you starting juggling or what?
What's up?
Gonna do some juggling while we get it back online?
I guess. It's I can perform. What are we performing here? Should we sing?
Let's do it. All right, let's talk about the idea of the concept of partner-led sales. What does that mean to you, and how is that different from the landscape you were describing? Back in call it 2015, 2013 when you started this.
Now we're back.
Are we back?
Now we're back. Yeah, now we're good.
Scott asked you a question.
Can you hear us now? Yeah,
Max, I was actually asking. I was asking you.
Jared's foot. Yeah, Jared's foot pulled the mic cord out. Yeah.
Smart.
So we were off, but we're back.
All right. What was the question?
The concept of partner-led sales. What does that mean to you? Versus 2013, 2015. Most people running predictable revenue playbook. Everyone seemed to be doing up cranking. And now there's this idea of partner-led sales that seems to be sort of the next wave, maybe mixed in with a little PLG. What's your take on the landscape?
Yeah, we did an investment into Crossbeam, and we looked into quite a bit of partner tech and stuff. I think Crossbeam and maybe one or two other deals we ended up doing, but for
Cabal
us
as well.
Which one?
Cabal,
yeah, love Cabal. For us at Outreach, I think we were one of the first folks to do it really well. I know Jared at Drift, you were running a really good operation over there as well, but we leaned on that big time. Like I was on a podcast, I think, with Poya from SaaStr the other day, and his like main question was all about the stuff that we were doing. Where I always came to the table like a general manager for like a sports team. I looked for like deals, 3-team trades, things like that. Like, how can we all do like a win-win here? When we got I remember when we got the sales engagement domain, we bartered like 2 webinars with the sales consultant who was, who owned the domain, and instead of paying him cash, because like we didn't want to spend the money. But I think like from a partnership standpoint, like your customers are our potential customers, our customers are your potential customers. And I always looked at that running Sales Hacker as a real threat to my business, because like if I'm a vendor that's complementary to Outreach, would I rather pay to be at Outreach's customer conference than to be at Sales Hacker? And if that's the case, like how do I make our Sales Hacker events so much better to be up like at a higher standard? And our events always had to be profitable where their events could be loss leaders. So like, Outreach or Sales Loft or any of these companies that had raised a bunch of money could have like Shaq be the keynote, Beyonce do the after party, sushi for lunch. Like I had to go have box lunches. Like I had to go have Mark Cranny do me a favor, or Jill or Matt, or somebody, and be the keynote speaker from my event. Like I couldn't go afford to pay somebody $50,000 to come speak at my conferences. So
100%. That's why we're all here. We're remote right now. Like Partner Hackers had to be a profitable business from day one. We didn't have that luxury. Right?
Exactly. But like to Scott, to your point, to your question, like I always thought that was that's like a great go to market, and it was almost like a threat to my business because it's one of the best go to markets is to just go and your lowest hanging fruit is complementary vendors. So if I'm Outreach, I want to know who's a customer of HighSpot that's not a customer of mine. That's going to be the lowest hanging for me, right? So like, how do I go and get that information and then like facilitate those conversations that need to happen to get them on? And then I think we saw a lot of companies try to stay independent and like work with both vendors equally. So like HighSpot would work with us and Sales Loft to support in sales cycles. But I don't really know if that's the best practice. I don't know if it's like, let's just work with everybody, or if it's like, let's just go really deep with who we think is going to be the winner here and, build GTM together.
That's a great question. I'd love to hear Scott and Jared's take on that.
Well, I think these are different. I would bifurcate that between partnerships and alliances, right? Like alliances, like you are betting on a winner, right? So like my PandaDoc story was like, I bet on HubSpot winning SMB CRM, right? That was my alliance, but I partnered with Insightly, Pipedrive, Copper, ProsperWorks, whatever the heck they're called. You name any SMB CRM I partnered with, but my alliance was with HubSpot. So like I did pick a winner, so to speak, in terms of like going all in, but I partnered with everybody. And I feel like these are, they're different levels of investment. So I think it's both, actually, Max. I don't think it's a dichotomy. I think you should be able to do both. Unless you're directly competitive and like you're literally taking food off of each other's table.
Like how often?
I think you should integrate with both, but do you have joint go to market, with both? And do you let that be known also, or are you like duplicitous? Like, are you sitting there telling both of them that like, hey, we're just working on this special go to market motion for you, but you're actually doing both of them? Like, because I've seen that all the time, and then that leads to
garbage. Yeah.
That leads to bad.
That leads nowhere.
That leads to ultimately bad things because then nobody wants to work with you. Like, so yeah, listen, I've running marketing at Outreach from like 25 to 100 million ARR. I focused on a lot of this type of stuff. I thought we did it a really interesting way, but I don't know if that was always reciprocated the same. And there were definitely vendors that I thought did it well and vendors that I thought didn't do it very well. So
totally.
I don't know where to go with that, but
yeah.
No.
My 2 cents on that is I think you got to play nice, in the sandbox with everyone at the beginning, because you need to find out, who's going to be the biggest kid in the playground one day before you make that bet. But, once you've clearly identified that and one partner is, maybe they don't even have to be the leader. Maybe they're just the one that really leans in the most, and you've tracked the number of introductions and, actual deals that you've co-sold together. You can start doubling down slowly. Partner-led sales to me is just sales now. There's no lone wolves in sales anymore. Those days are long gone. And if you don't have a partner or a trusted advisor bringing you into a deal, or like helping you open doors or helping with the velocity of that deal, the likelihood of that deal getting done are slim to none. And likely you won't even get a chance to have a shot on goal, especially if you're trying to go up market.
Hey, Alex, what episode was Scott? Let me know. So if you haven't listened to it, you actually got to go listen to the partner episode I did with Scott on his role at Outreach, which was strategic engagement, which I thought was the right approach to all of this, which was just like, look, on a deal that we shouldn't lose, how the hell do we surround this account, right? Whether it was a partner by name or it was, the husband's board member, right? Like, no matter what it was, like, where can we get some influence to tackle this account with more than just this AE that like, man, she's a certified quota killer, whatever. She doesn't have any influence over that CRO of a $500 million revenue business. She really, truly doesn't. But there might be two people that does. And I thought the way that you framed that and thought that way, Scott, was like, it's very much a partner-led approach, so to speak, but it was, not by those words and not by that name. And I mean, in aggregate, I bet those deals where the strategic engagement team was involved, I'm assuming your win rates were higher.
Way higher. And I mean, it resulted in literally thousands and thousands of warm introductions to enterprise accounts, executives. We could directly fly to the top of the mountain and get our CRO talking to their CRO, our CEO talking to their CEO. I would urge everyone to go listen to the episode because I broke it all down. But essentially, it was about the amount of value, revenue, and pipeline that is just sitting nascent in most companies' networks is truly insane, especially in tech where everyone's jumping around so much. So I would urge everyone to broaden the thinking of what it means to be a partner. A partner can be a community member, can be a friend, can be a VC, can be a board member, and truly spending the time to unlock those networks. That's the future in my eyes. Is building networks, understanding networks, building content that drives community, and then community generates revenue. I think that's where we're headed.
100%.
So I want to ask you about, sales hacker. You got hacker in the name. So your, hacker is like finding really resourceful ways to do things out of the box and solve problems on the fly. I saw one of you post on LinkedIn this story about, I think it was either a SaaStr conference or a Salesforce conference, and you couldn't afford to like officially like host a room or a table, but you had this amazing hack. Can you tell that story? I think it's so amazing. I love these stories.
Yeah, Dreamforce. Everybody had booths, which were very expensive, and then they had like lounges where they rented out restaurants for a couple days, also very expensive, $50,000 to $150,000, whatever it is. And we couldn't afford doing any of that, but we wanted to have a presence at Dreamforce because we were a sales media company, like we should have a presence there. And our way to hack that was we kind of found out that if in all these luxury high-rise buildings, they have lounges, and you can, if you have an apartment there, you could rent the lounge. And if you rent an apartment for a month as like a short-term rental, you can rent the lounge. So for I think it was like $8,000 a month rent to be in one of these high-rises, which is expensive rent. That's really expensive. I couldn't afford $8,000 a month to have an apartment. But for this, I factored it into like the cost of the event. So you pay $8,000 to rent the place, and then you could rent the lounge out for I think it was like $100 an hour or something like that. And it was like a maximum 8 hours a day or whatever. So we rented it out for like 3 days in a row, and then we would go to Costco a couple days before, grab a bunch of stuff like snacks, pastries, whatever to have in there, orange juice. And then we would do mimosas. We had some champagne in there. So we would do like little brunches, and then we catered in each day, just like breakfast burritos or whatever. And so people could come like start the day there, go to meetings there. We had like a couple sessions of content there. And it was just in this lounge at this apartment building, but the apartment building was right on the corner of 3rd and Mission, right above Grove Cafe. Right. So we were overlooking, we had the best location. I mean, you couldn't get a better location than that. And we would sell sponsorships to it, and we would end up netting out like, I don't know, $50,000 every year profit on getting real estate and a presence at Dreamforce. So again, like just find ways to hack the system. And that's how Sales Hacker was born. Sales Hacker, the whole hacker mentality was just generating more revenue using less resources. And that's ultimately what we had, early in my career at Udemy was we didn't have resources that everybody else had. So like I had to figure out how to build an SDR team using virtual assistants in the Philippines. And, that was it. I didn't have budget for SDRs. I couldn't pay people $60,000 a year or more, or whatever it was.
I mean, this mentality, I think I've heard some feedback in the market that and I might have even heard either of you or both of you say this, like, hey, at the peak of the bubble, which you might not have known it was the peak of the bubble at the time, was like, man, hacker in the name, like I would have gone back and renamed it because it has this connotation of like, X, Y, or Z. But at the same time, sitting at where we're at right now.
Those are your roots, man.
No, hold on. I'm getting to it. Sitting at where we're at right now, I feel like there's a lot of people that are going to have to realize that they need to go back to being a hacker, because guess what? The budgets are gone. The layoffs are happening, and we're in for a long run, folks. And, the sales hacker OGs and the stuff that Max is talking about right here and the stuff that we're promulgating, like, hacking's back in style, baby.
It needs to be.
Hell yeah,
yes.
I mean, people are going to have to figure out how to be more scrappy and conserve cash and figure things out. You can't just throw money at the problem like you could when you knew the next round was guaranteed and coming in short order. And, the tides have gone out. And so we'll see where it shakes out. But listen, I thought some of the stuff that we did early on in the business was really cool. I do think that I could have been more mature about running the business. I think my regrets boil down to not hiring a COO early enough or at all, and operating with a little more, I'd say, business maturity and putting money back into the business to fund focused efforts. Like a lot of times I think we threw a lot of things at the wall to see what stuck and then would chase that thing. I don't know if that's the best way to do it. So in hindsight, might have done that differently. But I was, mid-20s, young kid, had a good cash flowing business, and I was having a lot of fun, honestly. Couldn't pick a better profession to run a company, like a media company like that in. Who doesn't want to hang out with a bunch of salespeople? They're the most fun people, right? Better than doing a CISO conference, right?
Oh my gosh.
Or a GC conference. I can't imagine being in a room full of legal folks all the time. But
my gosh, yeah. I was trying to steal the former head of events from Drift, Jana Erickson, which her and I had a lot of fun. Scott, Jana, right?
I know her well. Yeah.
I was trying to steal Jana. I was like, Jana, come run this thing with me. And I had her on the 1 yard line, and I was like, Jana, you're running events right now for CISOs. Let's be real. Hey, when you go home at night, are you really that excited? Come on, get over here. Come over here where the water's warm and have some fun with the, where partnerships meets sales, meets marketing, the go-to-market side, right? The fun side. I want to pivot the conversation to a convo I've had a couple times with an individual you may or may not know, Tiffany Bova. So Tiffany was the Gartner's #1 analyst of all time. Thanks to Joe Rowley in chat, Tiffany's been able to develop a relationship with me because she's been a channel chief for a Fortune 500 company, and she's held the sales seat, so she has a good perspective. But one stat that she's thrown at me, Scott and Max, whoever can pick this up that they want, is that on any given month, quarter, or year, she's been tracking sales attainment, right? So quota attainment for the past 15 years, and that number of people who miss on any given month, quarter, or year is at 56%, and it has stayed the same for the past 15 years. Why the hell is that? What was all this sales tech for, and rev tech and martech? Is that? I mean, I don't know if it's the sales innovation dilemma or that new book that came out. What's your thought process on that? Quote, we've brought all this automation and innovation to the space, but sales attainment hasn't gone up. And in fact, last quarter I read the last stat was 63% missed. In Q3, Q4 might be any worse. What's your take on that, having seen the evolution of sales tech?
First of all, we live in a bubble. There are 5,000 customers that use outreach. Maybe that number is 6,000 now. So that means maybe 10,000 companies use sales engagement, which means maybe 12,000 companies use some form of modern sales technology. I think Salesforce has 200,000 customers. I think they represent 20% of the market. I think that market's growing 20% year over year or something like that. So you can fact check me on the math. Somebody in the background could go Google a bunch of that stuff. But roughly there's 1 million companies on CRM, and maybe 12,000 of them are high tech. So let's not sit here and say that wow, all the sales innovation has existed now for 7 years. Why hasn't anything changed? What do you mean? It's still such a small part of the market that's actually adopted anything. So if she's looking at those numbers across the board, especially across Salesforce customers, and they're not using modern sales technology, then what's going to change? So I wouldn't put that on the shoulders of we've invested in all the sales technology and nothing's changed. That's bullshit. Nobody's invested in any sales technology. 1% of the market has invested in sales technology. 12,000 of a million is, what is that? 1.2%. So I don't know. I think that there's just lack of a market penetration and adoption there that takes a while to filter through. So that'd be like
Right.
the first thing I'd say to all that. What else? I don't know. I would need time to give you a more.
I mean, I've got a really boring economist answer to this that nobody wants to hear. You're always going to find an equilibrium, right? So like, if it's been this for a long time, okay, maybe you adapt new tactics, everything gets more efficient. Then what's going to happen to the expectations? They're going to ramp up. There's some kind of equilibrium where like, hey, you always want somewhere around half of your people missing your quotas. Otherwise, you're not aiming high enough. There's always going to be an adjustment. So I don't know if I would take that number because that's a subjective number. You get to pick what the quota is, right? So not that outbound sales and sales in general is not getting difficult right now and in a tough spot from all the anecdotal evidence we have talking with people. But I think that percentage number, it's an equilibrium number. If there was a 10-year span where 95% of people were hitting quota, you just say we have a culture of too low expectations. I mean, I would, right? I would. You want a number that's challenging but not unattainable, and that's going to get you somewhere around 50%.
Not to mention efficiency, right? Like you need revenue efficiency, like CAC, LTV, and unit economics of any given rep or a series of reps, right? Like there's definitely a balance to be had there. Guys, I'd love to talk to you a little bit too.
If you Googled the companies with the largest market caps a decade ago and matched it with the companies with the largest market caps right now, how much of that do you think would overlap? I don't know. I didn't do it. Somebody can go do that. But like for every
30 to 40%, maybe. Yeah.
For every blockbuster, there's a Netflix. So like you're going to have companies that do a really good job that come out of nowhere that are highly efficient. And you're going to look at those and say like, why isn't everything changing? Every company's probably like that. It's not true. There's just as many companies that are blowing up are also coming crashing down. So I think it nets out also. Like the markets are cyclical, and we're going to sit here and say like, wow, the companies that we work with that are high tech companies have gotten so much better. How is this number not improving? But for every 5,000 of those companies, there's 5,000 other companies that are getting put out of business. So
I have a follow-on question for you, Max. What companies do you feel like have become a big cap tech company that have embraced like what you were, evangelizing around Sales Hacker early on? I mean, does a company like a Snowflake, for example, and Frank Slootman and that mentality, like, do they stand out as like, obviously their tech was cool and they have developer community and ecosystem, by the way, their app ecosystem and what they're doing with their data platforms and their integration, it is brilliant. But their sales execution seems to have been highly effective. What companies stand out to you in like this, decade of like sales hacking and sales transformation, sales engagement that have really knocked it out of the park, to your point?
Snowflake's a good example. And then reinforced that by hiring Lars. And, I think they they were doing really well. And they said, we need to focus on pipeline. Who's the best person to go focus on pipeline? I believe they asked that directly to Craig at Topo, and he was like, Lars. And they said, all right, Lars, we need you, here's the Brinks truck, backed it up to his house, and they got Lars. And they got Lars. So, I think they're a great example of it. I'm trying to think of some other ones. I mean, there were definitely some great SaaS companies that are public and at least were skyrocketing that were, outreach power users like Zoom, Cloudflare, CrowdStrike, Okta, Twilio, you name it. So I think there's a lot there. Even the telcos too, like surprisingly, are like really good early-ish adopters to sales tech. So I know AT&T and Verizon, T-Mobile all have kind of robust sales tech stacks and fairly good leadership in those areas.
And the telcos aren't scared to work the accounts with other people as well. Like as much shade as the telcos get for being out of date, they're no stranger to sharing lists and partnering up. I mean, a lot of channel emanated from old school telco PBX systems, right? Like that's where the channel kind of originated from, that ended up becoming to Ingrams and stuff like that too. So those adopters tend to do better.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the.
We also going back to Snowflake. Going back to Snowflake quick. I did an interview with Lars last week about his academy that he just created over at Snowflake. He's got like a full SDR academy. He wants it to be like known as the next like Xerox did back in the day training hub. It's a pretty cool episode. It'll be dropping on the GTM podcast next week. Subtle plug, but it was a good one.
Hey, you're welcome to do plugs anytime, my man. We will definitely be checking that one out. I want to go to midstream in Sales Hacker's journey now. Like when Scott Barker came in to your worldview, Max, you brought this gentleman in here who's been a fantastic add-on. You guys are still doing business today. You started a venture fund together. You did a lot of cool stuff together. Scott, was your original title head of partnerships at Sales Hacker, or was that something like I remember that being in your title at some point?
Yeah, it was head of partnerships. But listen, we were a lean team that punched way above our weight in terms of value we could drive for partners. But that meant everything. That was creating pipeline, closing deals, creating case studies, building out sponsorship prospectus, actually coming up with the content for the campaign, actually moderating the webinars and like coming up with all of that. So I think it was pretty cool because that role, probably anywhere else, is probably 5 or 6 different roles. And so an incredible learning experience to just, learn how to context switch, learn how to be super resourceful. And just like, if I need a case study, I just go fucking build it on Canva. And I just go call a customer and get a quote. And you just do the hacky things you have to do to get it done. And I mean, it was tough at the beginning for sure.
No, if you get a chance to be like a linchpin employee at a really early company like that, like take it, man. Just take it. I mean, that's a ride. Like it
wasn't a take it. It was force this guy to give me the job.
So here's the story.
It was all in.
We hired this role, and it was literally like at that time, LinkedIn had something going on. It just introduced the way the algorithm is. So I was getting like millions of views on every post. This was summer of like 2017 or something like that, I think. And so when we hired for this role, I just posted on LinkedIn like a type form. I was like, I'm hiring for a head of partnerships. It's gonna like run sponsorships for me and help webinars, stuff like that. And we ended up with like 150 applications. Narrowed that down to like 30 actually pretty solid people. Narrowed that down to 12. Went through like an interview process. Eventually got down to 2, and it was Scott and Scott, another Scott. And Scott A, and literally Scott B.
And you accidentally gave the offer to the wrong guy, but here we are.
Exactly. I was calling other Scott.
And here we are, baby.
Hey, you got the job. And then I heard his voice, and I was like, oh, fuck. It was the wrong guy. No. So other Scott was an enterprise sales rep coming from a different industry. And that's actually what I wanted. Like I wanted somebody with enterprise experience who can help us do bigger deals like Microsoft and Salesforce. And then there was Scott Barker, who I thought was a lot more on the creative side and like was a hustler and can like figure out our business very well. And the team wanted Scott Barker, but I wanted other Scott, and we were split. It came down to like, okay, like I gotta ask this one question. So I called them both up, and I asked the other Scott. I was like, all right, so like, why do you want this job? And he's like, oh, I want to get back into sales and marketing. Selling sales and marketing technology, just don't really like what I'm selling right now, and like would like to work for you, blah, blah. And then I called Scott Barker, and he was like, it's the only job I will leave my job for right now. Like I will do anything to work with you, work with Sales Hacker. Like I see the vision. I see what you guys are doing. I want this job. So I was like, okay, I can't not hire you. We gave the job to Scott Barker. And then the other Scott ended up, I helped him get a job at Drift. So I got him back in sales marketing tech, and he worked at Drift for a while, and I ran into him at SaaStr recently, and he's doing very well, so I'm very happy for him. But anyway, so Scott comes in, and stupidly, the same time as hiring Scott, we also changed our sponsorships to try to be like an annual sponsorship, and like instead of like a pay per package type thing. And looking back on it again, like you don't change two big things at the same time. And so we had trouble selling these sponsorships for like the first 3 months. And here I am like, well, I can't tell if it's the packages or I can't tell if it's Scott. Like, what are we doing here? Why isn't this, having the pickup? People still want the, chunks of like little packages instead of the annual thing. So we were kind of like reluctantly selling that to them. And we realized it was the annual thing that wasn't working. We needed to sell it in the way that like people like to consume it and buy it. And Scott was kind of thrown into the fire, and he had to go and build out like a bunch of new, he basically had to like realize this himself, build out the new prospectuses, figure out how to sell the products. Like we put a lot more on his plate than we thought we were putting on his plate at the same time, but came out the other side, and here we are 5 years later, and he's been my right-hand man through Sales Hacker Outreach and now the fund. And I think we're on to some pretty awesome stuff, and he's had, obviously opportunities that, he's made happen. I didn't give him anything. He earned it.
That's amazing. That hit me right in the heart, especially because I'm halfway blind, so I can't really see the chat up on the screen. But I did see my head of partnerships, Will Taylor, say, "I'm listening." So there you go, Will Taylor. I see that you're listening. There's a Scott Barker story for you. I'm listening. There we go, buddy. I love it.
I'll jump in there with just some learnings too, like from my perspective. And Max, I tell you this all the time, but it's been a hell of a ride. But some of the learnings, so like if I'm not multi-threaded in that initial interview, I don't get the job. The only reason that I ended up winning over Scott was one, that answer to that question, but also, even to get to that stage, if I wasn't multi-threaded, and you can take this to accounts, partner sales, whether you look at interview, I had talked to like everyone on the team and gone actually like around Max to make sure that I was multi-threaded. So tough times out there, tough times for hiring. So, if you are going for a role, go all in, multi-thread. I created a mock webinar deck with all of the people that I had worked for in the past who was like, looked like a sales hacker webinar, and got them to like put in quotes and stuff. So it's a different time. And I think we're at that different time again, where, if you want to do exceptional things, you have to, go and stand out some way. So that was one of the learnings. And then, just for anyone out there, like on the sponsorship model side of things, I think there is, there's ways to do annual deals, but just make sure that your barrier to entry for them to try your community out isn't too high. So have some sort of like initial offering, and then with an understanding that, if we do this smaller campaign, it goes well, we're going to roll that over to a larger, 6-figure annual deal or whatever. But anyway, I thought I'd share those two learnings.
No, and I got the chance to work with you on the, like the sponsor side of things, Scott, and I was always impressed with your ability to like drive value first. Like you weren't just sales. Like partnerships and media can be like blended, like, okay, this is sales by another name. But like the things that you were doing is that you were going above and beyond to show that you were creating value to get the deal done. And I think that has that same kind of hacker mentality. Like it wasn't just about like, hey, here's the price. It was like, no, here's the experience. Here's what we're bringing to the table. And if there was something missing, you were always willing to bring that to the table to make it happen. And we're always super creative. I think it was a great role model for me. Obviously, both of you two influenced me a ton. We're sitting here, we got the new hackers in the partner world, the OG sales hackers here. So this is just like this is funny. This is a dream come true.
Let's bring it home with this. Yeah. I want to ask you, and I'm sure you're thinking about this all the time with GTM Fund. Give me like one or two. What are the one or two shifts in the world that are currently underway or you think are about to be underway that you're the most excited about?
Shifts.
Max, you want to go first?
Yeah, go for it. You want to hit it? Go for it.
Yeah, I'll just, the first thing that comes in, and I hammer this home, and like your network is your net worth. And obviously that's cliche. Everyone's heard that.
It's still true
a billion times. But it's truer, and it's more true now than it ever has been. It's really tough to get time on busy exec calendars. No one wants another Zoom call on top of the 10 that they already have. So you need to find ways now to build your network through content. And I said this before, and then use that content to create community and use that community to generate revenue. And companies, we're seeing them catch up to that. But individuals, all the people listening to this, partner leaders, sales professionals, whatever your role is, if it is revenue generating, you can do this for yourself. So get out there. You got to start creating content, build community around that, and that will. It's like the truest form of sales. Provide the value up front, and then you can generate revenue on the back of that. So
Give to get.
I don't know if it's a new trend, but it's as true as it ever has been, if not more.
Max, what do you think?
Trends, capital's commoditized. Even in the bear market, it's just like there's money floating around. Money's money. I think people expect, at least in the funding environment, that they're going to get more with their investment. So it's like why folks like GTM Fund exist. I know Jill's here from Stage 2. That's why they exist. I think there are a lot of capital plus firms that are being created right now that we see. People Tech Partners, Semper Virens, I think, is another one on the HR side. There's a bunch that are coming out right now, but I think that's the future of venture capital, is building some kind of platform around more than just a fund. So for us, it's fund, community, and media. I think that's definitely a big trend that we're banking on.
So I want to peel that. You just gave me a thought, Max. I want to peel that back one more layer real quick. This is a little bit of what we've done. Like, I don't know if you had to do this as Sales Hacker, but sometimes we were getting something together and it was not just the partnership or the sponsorship, but it was like, yo, the way that you're talking about that and framing that content and your pitch as a company and being a vendor on the Partner Hacker platform, it's garbage. We got to help you talk the right way. Like, that's not going to resonate with anyone. So we were just not doing partnerships or sponsorships. We've been helping people craft their narrative and their story. So that's like media plus, right? It's not just giving you the spot to talk to our base.
That's like, it's like, we want to help you become good enough to be a sponsor with us. I don't say that in an insulting way, but like, you got to get your message more compelling before we're going to be willing to work with you.
That's like all we did at Sales Hacker, because we would not let people do webinars that were promotions for their business. Like, it had to be value add. And so like almost a big part of Scott's job, unfortunately, and Gaetano's job, ended up becoming like teaching them how to give webinars, how to do webinars that were useful and not just like completely promotional.
So this is like everything plus right now. Like, it's VC plus, right? It's media plus, it's software plus. It's not enough just to have the software that's like, look, you can do sales engagement or ABM or chat or data. It's the thing plus. I think that's the big differentiator right now. And my takeaway from this conversation is that, like, look, the game's changed where you just can't have the thing. You have to help them, get to the high spot, right? You have to help them get to the mountain with that other value add that no one else can. And as you scale, what better way to do that than with people that have been to that mountaintop, right? Like, that's my message with Partner Hacker.
So you're giving a pitch for GTM Fund right here?
That too. I mean, Partner Hacker, GTM Fund. Like, I'd much rather work with people that aren't just selling me a thing to do the thing. I'd much rather work with people that are helping me get to the place that I'm trying to get to. Of course, you got a software. Of course, you got a surface. Of course, you got a fund, whatever the heck it is. Everything's this plus economy. And I think that's
you can't ask me a trends question without expecting me to pimp my fund. What do you think?
Of course. Big fans of it over here. I've sent multiple things your way. Scott will get random text messages from me all the time. Like, hey, Scott, I got a company you got to talk to. I send people to GTM Fund first, and I do mean that. Max and Scott, y'all have been an inspiration to me throughout my career. Thanks so much for everything you did with Sales Hacker, everything you're doing with GTM Fund, and for joining us here, PartnerUp Podcast Live, Day 4, PLX Summit, Partner-Led Sales Day.
One more day tomorrow, partner-led success. So
partner-led success. We're gonna hit the success department too. Everyone that's crazy enough to be hanging out with us after hours, being here all day for 9 hours. Thank you so much. We've had some heavy hitters in the chat too. So appreciate it, y'all. Thanks so much.